All right, so you've probably seen the Project Veritas documents that have come out that are kind of verifying the one DARPA leak that happened a number of months ago with regards to the possibility of a lab leak, and also a funding request from Peter Daszak, I believe that's his name, from EcoHealth Alliance, and where DARPA had denied it because they didn't want to get involved with it because it looked like it was gain of function research to them, and just the benefits did not outweigh the risks in their regard. And I mean, to that regard. But so what had come to light, Project Veritas has, I guess, received leaked military documents, which I kind of glanced over them as much as I could in a few minutes, and just to see if they're valid by looking for just formatting errors. And not that you can't have formatting errors in a real military document, and just basic general things, red flags that maybe this is not legit, right? And having been in the military as a Marine officer, I know what to look for. But I mean, if you're good, you can forge these documents fairly easy. But everything looked on the up and up. It looked like the one document, there was a summary of the whole spiel of lab leak origin and some different aspects of the virus were put into this thing. It was to the Inspector General via the Commandant and DARPA, I guess. But I believe the investigation itself was done by a major, which is I wanted to say, which I'm not an expert on this. I've only looked at these documents last night briefly, but it is in the line of what is legit. I mean, when I was an officer as well, every once in a while, not to say that everybody, when you're a Marine officer, I don't know how the other services do it, gets put on these kind of get these taskers or these missions to investigate certain scenarios or investigate certain instances. A lot of times outside of criminality, or it could be held criminal, but you get tasked as an officer to go investigate certain things. I've done it a couple times where normally it's piddly stuff, like we're in the operational status and we got a broken rifle. It looks like it's negligence, or weird little things like that. And you go out there and do interviews, and you see the scene of where supposed criminality, and then you write an official document stating what you found, and you present it to higher, who's the one they're tasking you to do these kind of things. Yeah, when you do these reports, it's kind of, I don't know, you're putting your name on these things. So, and from my experience, it's like, well, you cross your T's, you dot your I's. Everything has to be enclosed. Everything has to be backed up. Otherwise, you're going to be held dead to rights by higher, who tasked you to do this. So when this guy puts his, his butt on the line, excuse me, I don't know why that happens, but he puts his butt on the line and does this report and sends it up to the Commandant of all people, that he's the one who has to review this, and he's going to send it to the Inspector General. Like, that's a big deal. So I take it with a lot of credibility. So we look at that. The document goes into the so-called drug that we shall not mention. There's two of them, and how that was deemed effective for the same reasons that the first study we seen last year on it, why it was effective when it was in vitro trials with it, that it stops replication, that it also modulates immune response. And then there's another one that was actually used at the lab itself for any kind of accidental contamination or whatnot. But anyway, they make mention of the spike protein and how that was engineered and how it was deemed too dangerous. And they're alluding to the therapeutics that we're taking through possible mandates, that it's, genetically mimicking that spike protein. We don't know exactly what the toxicity of it, and to this, their opinion was that it was a no-go. It was no-go criteria, which means that they should not further mandate this within the service, that it needs to be looked at, or At least that's my opinion of it. But no-go means they recommend not going any further with it. I just said for mandate the service, that's my own spiel. But no-go criteria means you're not doing it. It might put us in harm, might degrade whatever readiness. So you can, it's a negative. So with that regard, these documents leak, and we can actually see that's kind of verifying some of the DARPA leaks that were not verified. It just goes along those same lines. And we also know that within the military itself now, especially at least in the Marine Corps, there is a lot of debate of whether there should be vaccine mandates. Now, whether Hire just told them, hey, you got to do this, and they're like, yes, sir, let's keep going on it. And this report was just filed into the, whatever the receptacle, who knows. But it is interesting that the military had looked at it. They were aware of, or at least especially the Marine Corps was going to Inspector General and the Commandant. They were aware of the leak scenario, and they were aware of some of the information with regards to the spike protein that was in the vaccines in relation to the engineered virus and how it relates to previous viruses and what was going on over in that situation in Wuhan, and how NIH and EcoHealth Alliance were involved. So there's still good people in the service, and they're trying to get the truth. And of course, this was leaked, but rest assured, like, it seems like there's still a good, at least Marine Officer Corps that's in there, that's getting information. Now, whether they're affecting policy instead of mandating certain things for the service members, it looks like they're losing that war. But if we can get the information out, if we can understand, because we knew this lab leak thing was the most likely scenario, and then evidence trickles out, over the last couple of years. But if you remember, I was talking about this when this first happened, and it just so, there's a lot of other people that were, I'm not just saying to myself, I was listening to these other people, and it just makes the most plausible scenario. That's where you want to look at first, instead of doing all these witch hunts. But that's the other thing about this. So then you have Fauci and Rand Paul sparring in the Senate again. But in these things, these documents, you can allude to the fact, because they mentioned Fauci in there, that he approved, the funding for this research. So that we now know that Fauci and his ilk, we only know through what is published from the FOIA requests or whatever from his meetings, but we don't know what was actually said. That's when they really want to cover stuff up. I guess you're never going to really know besides what's in the document, so you have to infer a lot of things. But there's certain things that are said in the document that, certain funds that were allocated, and people changed their tunes. But we knew he knew of this lab leak, and he was intimately involved one way or the other. He knew or he should have known, but we know that he kind of knew what was going on over there. In that document too, from the military leak, they mentioned Fauci in there, and that it was, they were assured it wasn't gain of function, but they themselves saw it as gain of function and weren't going to deal with that. But that Fauci went ahead and okayed Fauci's NIH. Now, I don't know if that saying Fauci, they could have been a little more explicit in that, whether it was Fauci himself, but I'm sure they didn't really know, because he's given the okay on a lot of this funding, but at the same time, there's other people that once given the okay, it's delegated duty, so you don't really know for sure. But they funded it anyway. Along the lines of all this, you go back to what was happening in Kazakhstan, and there was a report going out that there was a biological facility that could have been taken over, which turns out, I guess it wasn't, but it leaked that it was possibly U.S. funded. And to me, I was like, well, we're supposedly, at odds with the Russians and these other supposed allies, but we're funding all this stuff. We're at odds with China, but we're funding stuff that's going on over there. So if this doesn't get your brain housing group moving a little bit and think about what is going on with our government and what these intertangling webs of corruption, then I don't know what to tell you, because this is just crazy. The fact that we are funding these kind of operations, and the fact that we're supposedly at odds with these nations, it seems to be like somewhat a psyop, or you're getting played the fool as the public. So, I'll probably go into this a little bit further, because I don't know if I hit everything running around, but I would lean to I would look at that document and realize that there are some things that can be done if you do contract this disease, and that the origins of this disease are more than likely, like I said last year, it looks like the lab leak theory. It looks like we were doing some crazy stuff over there, along with the Chinese. And you put into that too with the Chinese intertanglement with our own universities. There's just a lot of intertangled mess in a lot of these bureaucracies. And whether it's out of pure ignorance or it's a maniacal megalomaniac that's controlling this, or maybe the convergence of both of those, which I tend to lean on that. There's some funky stuff going on, and we could have saved a lot of lives, and we need to make sure this thing doesn't happen again. A leak like this, because leaks happen. We know that there's a well-documented a number of different leaks of various viruses, but we were able to contain them, and so this stuff happens. And that was one of my first assertions when this happened. It's like, these things happen. There's a guy that documented a number of leaks within contemporary times that happened, and were either just in weird ways. I mean, you just got to do a little research. Now, you can't really Google any of this stuff up because you're going to get all kinds of weird nonsense that they're contrived now, but maybe DuckDuckGo, or maybe just dive a little deeper into those search pages, that's a whole nother broad thing. Oh, that was the other thing on the document. Now, if you're listening this far, here's a little nutshell in there. So it was alluded to some kind of operation, alluded to the fact that if it was a cover-up, or it didn't allude, it said if it was a cover-up, it doesn't seem like, it seemed like their paper trail would have been a lot more concise and organized. But I also would assert that seems to be Major's opinion, possibly, because we know the incompetence, and maybe he's used to, in the military, having everything documented to a certain extent, having processes and procedures where these guys that know they're doing something wrong, they not necessarily are going to do that or hold to that level of discipline. So I mean, I'm along the same lines as thinking, but at the same time, you always have to ascertain the possibility that these guys are just sloppy. All right, that's just all there is, and obviously they are, and they feel like they have nothing to fear, really. And as you can see, you can lie to Congress, and you can just get away with that if you're in the right if you're pushing the right political agenda. Anyway, peace. Talk to you later.